Dem Services, who've actually made it possible for me to be here tonight and had a rejig around. Thank you. It is greatly appreciated. So before we start the meeting, if I can just give you the fire procedures. In case of an emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as the real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. The lifts can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it is safe to do so by a member of staff. If we can move to the agenda, if I just let you know, Warren Drew will be here, but he will be 10 minutes late. So I can see everyone having a real jig about over there. He will be here, but he's going to be 10 minutes late. Apologies and changes of membership. And my understanding that Councillor Stewart is replacing Councillor Lilly this evening. And do we have? And Councillor Cook from IWOLC cannot attend this evening, but another representative of IWOLC hasn't been sent. If we could move to the minutes of the previous meeting, which starts on page 5. So page 5, any changes? Page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. And nobody wants to make any tricky questions that we might have done something that we want to all big about. Fantastic. I will sign the minutes. Do we have any declarations of interest on anything that is on either our agenda or on the cabinet agenda? No, we're all happy. Public question times. Do we have any public questions written or not? This could be a really quick meeting. My foot's going to really appreciate that. General exceptional decisions and urgent decisions. Do we have any? That's no. Progress updates. If you go to page 11 and 12. The performance management, that was held yesterday. That was the meeting I attended yesterday. It was really good. So whoever ran that course yesterday, it was brief and to the point, but actually thought it was really good and really useful. So thank the officers, please, for actually putting that together for us. Kingston Marina, that's all completed, isn't it, all those actions? So that was the only action that we need to worry about, whizzing through this. Committees, work plan and forward plans, pages 13 to 24. Is there anything anybody would like to raise at the moment that isn't in the agendas on the work plan and the forward plan? The one thing I will bring to all your attention is if you go on the forward plan to 12th of December, you'll see that there is an extra cabinet meeting that has been put in for the 12th for December. Because there is an extra cabinet meeting, corporate scrutiny will be sitting 2 days beforehand, which does mean that the school place planning and the anti-poverty strategy will come to this meeting. I didn't feel it was right that we could have two major things on cabinet papers and then not having a scrutiny meeting beforehand. I did speak to the leader of the council and he completely agreed that it was right and proper that scrutiny should sit 2 days beforehand and read those papers. Councillor Brodie.
Just to clarify something for me, and of course I haven't always been around so much recently, but in terms of school place planning, can somebody clarify for me who makes the final decision?
Can I pass you to Mr. Whitaker? Is that okay? It would be quite nice to know it would quite nice to know its journey and the whether it's going at the moment, just to be, especially as we have the press here, they can make a note of that as well.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So the timeline we have is this. On the 17th of October, we have a bespoke children's scrutiny meeting to look only at school-based planning. The consultation finishes on the 1st of November, and then there'll be Cabinet on the 12th of December, and Cabinet will decide what happens next. So it's a Cabinet decision is the answer to your question.
Any more further questions? Councillor Brodie.
I think that should be well known by people on the island, you know, who are worried about schools closing, because they think, you know, that all councillors have some approach to this, you know, and instead it's just the 8 members of the Cabinet. You know, that means there's 31 councillors have absolutely nothing to do with it. And it's not as if we have majority rule on this council. And I just don't think that message has got out to people, because I'm getting lobbied by people. I don't know about other people. I'm sure you are if you've got, like I'm sure Rodney has, lobbying in Wroxall. You know, I'm sure Susie Ellis with 2 schools down for, you must be getting lobbied constantly. And it just seems to me that in the past, I'm long enough around here to remember the middle school closures, which were the then overwhelmingly majority council had the courage to take it to full council and give every member of the council a vote. I'm not desperate for a vote, but I just think that it should be a council decision, not just a Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, that's definitely taken on board. I can see the process and the route that it is taking, but I do think it does need to be cleared to, you know, to our residents that actually this is a Cabinet decision, and you know, it is not. I have replied to lots and lots of emails that say, well, actually, it doesn't fall within. I can bring it to corporate scrutiny and people can have their say on it, but actually, the final decision will stick with Cabinet. And sadly, as Cabinet members, as I've said before, I understand completely. You do have to make some really incredible, difficult decisions. So I do understand that as well.
Thank you, Joe. My apologies. Yes, the Wroxall Parish Council and myself organised a public meeting at Wroxall, and I did make it clear to those people in the who came that evening that it would be a Cabinet decision. Thank you.
I think we do need to make it really clear as well that we carry on making sure that that consultation is circulated to as many people as possible. We are forever as councillors, things suddenly fall on our doorstep and they say, well, I never had a say in it. And then you point people back in the direction that was a consultation, and then they'll come up with they didn't see it. It would be really good that we make sure that not just the schools involved, that every school is having the opportunity. And I think we need to make it clear that this is just the beginning of a journey. That's what we said at corporate scrutiny at the last corporate scrutiny, that, you know, this was to clear about 190 something places, and actually it's about 330 that will be needed. So I don't think that message is getting out properly, that this is the start of a process. I think we need to be really honest with the public about that. Thank you. Are we okay to move on? Yes. We okay to move to number 8? Yeah. Right, we move to number 8, and we won't have a huge discussion on this because when we had, as you're aware, you have to set these agendas quite a way before the actual meetings are. And I put this on the agenda because I felt, even though it was going to happen after the end of the consultation, that it was such a big thing that would affect the Isle of Wight. And also we had some very knowledgeable councillors on this subject who are part of corporate scrutiny, that we wanted to bring it into a very public forum. We did invite Exxon Mobil to come and speak to us, and then you've spoken to them again on Monday, haven't you? I'd like everybody, if you want to have a say in this, you're most welcome to. As chair of this committee, I would just like to say, things like this, I don't think ever truly go away. That they might have been told that the consultation, you know, we're just not going to do anything at the moment, but these things have a tendency of coming via other directions, and usually other directions that are dressed up in a way that they've realised that it causes a public furore. How can we get this through without actually having too much interference? So my feeling would be it's gone away a bit too easily. Maybe I'm a woman and I'm completely cynical, but it seems to have gone away very quickly to lots of public opposition. But I wouldn't be surprised if it rears its head in a way that becomes a planning application that we can do nothing about. So I will open this and I'll give it about 5 minutes for people to have their say on it, because I know it's really important to quite a lot of you on the committee, and see if you do share my feelings. Has it gone or has it not gone? Who would like to be first? Councillor Brodie.
Well, I would agree with you absolutely. I think Exxon were interested in whatever money might be available from central government. Central government has ploughed the money into Merseyside and Teesside, where jobs will be created. Carbon capture is still something, no matter what you think about it, that is on the agenda for the future. And I suspect, no matter who's in government in the future, that more money will be coming in the future. Exxon are going to be waiting for that opportunity. So I would say to people who are involved in the campaign, do not stand down, be prepared, because like you, I think this will come back at some point in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Councillor Hosdale. Yes, I agree with you that it came quite a surprise that it was over with quite so quickly. We were all sort of expecting it to continue much longer, and there'd be a lot more involved in it, a lot more information. But obviously, they have gathered information about this area. They do know a lot more now that the consultation has ended than they did before, and I think that it is important to keep that campaign group on ice, because if it's not this same thing, there will be something, because that Forley itself will need to justify its existence in some way or another, and we are looking at a future with other options that will be brought to us, and who knows if the Isle of Wight will be involved in that. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Stewart, you okay?
Councillor Richardson has spoken for both of us.
I like that. Move on now to number 9, review of the Cabinet agenda. On the Cabinet agenda, we have the local council tax support, which I've read through the papers. I have a couple of questions for it. I'm sure other members have questions about the council tax support. I know Sharon Betts is here, and I've raised a couple with her. So what I'll do is I will open it up to the committee, and I'll leave my questions to the end just in case they haven't already been answered, if that's okay. So who has questions? Sharon, you're here, aren't you, to answer questions? I believe Councillor Stevens isn't able to be here this evening, but so we'll refer the questions to the officer. Who'd like to be first? In an orderly queue. Councillor Stewart?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that the council are looking at maintaining the current system, the current approach, subject to an agreement by the Cabinet.
Yeah, that's correct. I think you'll see in the report there are a couple of changes there, which will bring our scheme into line with the national changes that are being introduced due to the universal credit. But apart from that, all the scheme remains the same.
And can I just follow that up? Was there any serious suggestion? Is there any serious consideration of trying to extend it further from 75 to 80%?
Not at this moment in time, no.
Any other questions? Councillor Brodie?
I don't know if it's a question, just an observation, really. I mean, it's in recent years, I mean, this is a decision for full council ultimately, in recent years, Councillor Garrett has regularly brought proposals to full council to make the scheme more generous in the face of the pressures that the council faces. And I think we probably need to be aware of that, I suspect that might come again. I personally would love to see it more generous, but until change comes, I'm sceptical about change in this country at the moment. Until change comes, this council is going to continue to face major difficulties in terms of setting the council tax again. Hopefully change will come, but I'm not confident of it. But we'll see after the 31st of October. Thank you, Chair.
So my questions regarding to it is, when you go to the Cabinet Papers, the recommendation, this will be taken through to full council. It's really confusing, this paper, and it's really hard to find out what the actual recommendation is. It would be really good if we could have a line that says, it is recommended to stay at the same percentage with a few of these caveats. It refers you to adoption of the proposed scheme as Appendix 4. Well, when you go to Appendix 4, then there is quite a confusing table. You know, it is really, really confusing. And what I would like to see is Cabinet take on board that this needs to be changed before it goes to full council, because otherwise you're going to have every councillor trying to work out actually what is the recommendation. It is, I don't know if it was just me, but could we simplify the actual recommendation? Did anybody else find that quite hard to actually find out what the percentage was? Councillor Blake.
Yeah, on that, this appears to be two Appendix 4s. Whether it is designed in one document, it does appear to be two in that. So there'll just be just some clarity on that, be useful.
I'm happy to take that action away to make sure that it's much more clear. I think on the corporate documentation, there is a pointer to the scheme in itself, but clearly that's not clear enough, so I will take that away.
Yeah, it's a really good tester for those who read papers. And to be fair, I've got a lot of time at the moment, sat at home not doing a lot. So I got the opportunity to really read it. But I think when you bring it to full council, that recommendation needs to be a lot clearer, because it is like the magical mystery tour. It's kept me entertained for a few days, but it's not clear at all. Thank you.
Taken. Thank you.
We're whizzing through this. Councillor Drew.
Thank you. Apologies if I missed it in the report. It is, as you say, a little bit hard to make head nor tail of in some aspects. But one thing I was interested in is obviously we know that there are a lot of people who are entitled to council support and other types of support that they don't avail of for various reasons. And I just wondered, is there a measure by which we can have a rough sort of notion of how many people might be missing out, and whether we're improving year on year? And is that measure, if it's not included, that we could perhaps seek to include? Thank you.
I would say I wish we could. We're working currently with the CAB to promote local council tax support in line with the winter fuel allowances being ceased, to try and get residents to, particularly for pension credits, to sign up for them, which would then enable them to receive support through local council tax support. But we promote it as at every opportunity. And we really want people to come forward and get the monies and the entitlements from this scheme.
I think that's one thing we need to take on board as well, because I know that I've been and seen a few residents before, when I could still drive, and actually help them fill out the forms, because, if you are elderly, it is actually, to actually apply for pension tax credits, it's actually quite confusing and quite daunting for them. So if there is a way that we could look at making that simpler and drawing people in and giving them that help and advice, lots of elderly people are very proud and don't want to claim for things. So I think if we can do a little bit of we are here to help you via the CAB, how you get to the CAB to get help, or even if we show councillors who want to go and help to fill in forms, I'm quite happy to go and see any of my residents and do it. I've spent so many times going and helping people fill out blue badge forms because they're completely confusing as well. So I just think there is more work that we can do. I think as a committee, that should be our recommendation, that the council does more to try and assist people to filling out the actual application forms for pension tax credits. Is everybody happy with that? Or want to word it better? Councillor Brodie.
Just for information, the community charity that I'm involved in, Pan Together, does that very thing for anybody on the Isle of Wight. It used to be something that was helped at the law centre before that closed, and we do that. And I know that's been looked at by Aspire now as a possible thing that they can get involved in. But we get a steady stream of people from across the island coming into our community centre on Pan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I think the recommendation would be that, you know, we ask the council to actually signpost people better to actually how they can get some help. So are we happy to put that as a proposal so that can be minuted that that's what we'd like to see? So I propose that. Who can second that? Councillor Downer. Everybody put their hands up. That's it. Yeah, that's fine. Everybody did. That's amazing. Right. So are we happy? Are we happy to move on? Cabinet papers is just. Right, so we will now move on to LEP integration of functions into upper tier local authorities. I assume Councillor Julie Jones-Evans is going to speak on this.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have some knowledge of it. It's actually held, this work is held by the leader of the council. And I believe at our last scrutiny, was that our last scrutiny meeting? Sorry, Mr. Rowland's online up there, thought it was behind me. There was a report was given. It was so I'm not entirely certain why we're looking at it again, where there was some extra questions, but things are moving forward. There's the new business group has been set up for the Solent area, and that's been chaired by Rachel Randall, who previously chaired the LEP, so got a really experienced person doing that. And of course, she's from the island. She's runs HTP College, so we're really fortunate we've still got that island voice at that level. Also, the work's being done at the moment, and some people in the room or online may be involved in some of the workshops that have been going on to deliver a Solent-wide strategy, which has to be in government this month. And also at the same time, we're doing individual ones for the 3 authorities. So there's work being done on the island one today. In fact, they came to the Economic Development Board this morning and did a presentation, and got some feedback from members from the Isle of Wight business community. So that's the quick whiz through from me, but Mr. Rowland may want to give you a bit more details. But I know we did discuss this before when it was at Cabinet, because it came to Cabinet last month, so I'm not entirely sure why we're looking at it again. But any questions, if we can't answer them here today, we'll obviously get back to you. But Mr. Rowland's online and may want to, unless, sorry, Alex, you're there. Sorry. Mr. Minns may want to take this one up as well. So apologies, sorry, Alex.
Yeah, fantastic. If we can, Alex, sorry, Mr. Minns, if you could answer.
Yeah, I understand with a similar view to Julie, and as far as if you look through the questions and the focus of scrutiny that we've got in front of us, they are all in the 2 papers that were supplied with the agenda today. And I think most of them could be drawn out and answered individually, but we can do that separately. But having looked through those 2 papers, most of the answers are in there to those questions.
I'm happy with it. All the questions here. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Stewart.
Obviously, this is the sort of thing which would come before my committee in terms of sort of economic integration. I have some concerns about what's planned. One of the things is that it talks about democratic control, but actually what you're looking at is chief executives and council leaders being involved rather than the actual councillors having much of a say. That's the first thing. There are a number of others. The second thing is actually something which came out of the recent campaign we've had against the pipeline, which is that the Solent cluster has, for all intents and purposes, been completely captured by Exxon. When you look at what was put forward, we had one tame academic, and every other single person on that presentations was a member of Exxon. When you look at the cluster itself and you start, as some of the campaign team did, talking to the individuals, some of them were sort of brought on board as it were very silent partners. So what we're looking at is a capture of part of this economic development by Exxon, who are doing things which we do not necessarily entirely agree with. And actually, you could say that they are not the largest employer of this area. If you look at the Solent regions, you would look at both all three universities. So I think that's something to be considered, and certainly perhaps looked at further. Separately, we have some mention of what this particular cluster might do, what silent partnerships might do. There are two things which stand out immediately. The first is the lack of focus on small businesses, which are actually the economic growth of the region in all aspects. And the second one is a focus on, and it's repeatedly said, and I don't understand it, and perhaps you might have a better idea. It says talks about economies of scale for housing, and I cannot see that that happens or can happen, given that the Isle of Wight is such a separate and is seen as a very separate economic area. And the final thing which I will mention is that, and I know that this is dealt with separately and maybe dealt with at later, the chief executive is taking this up under the new government suggestions, ideas. But one of the key things for us, if we are to have a Solent cluster, is a transport strategy which involves the ferries. And I think that, notwithstanding the fact that we're talking about the LEP here, that is something that has not figured previously, and perhaps is something which could be taken forward. I know there's quite a number of things there, but I just thought if I put it all in front of you, that will give you some idea of some of the concerns that seem to exist.
My suggestion would be, and I was going to bring this back to the committee's work plan as suggestions. I was going to do it at the end so we could have a little 5 minutes about it. Is I think at the next scrutiny meeting, we should put devolution on our agenda to discuss it. I know that I'm being asked to have meetings with different leaders across the area. Clearly I haven't been around for a few weeks, but I'm going to arrange those now. But would the committee because I think this would fall under lots of these conversations, rather than falling under the LEP, falls under devolution and what that would look like, rather than things that are outside the scope of the LEP. So would that be okay to put that on the next scrutiny agenda? Yep, Councillor Spink agrees with that as deputy of this committee, to put devolution on the next agenda. This would have been a lot longer meeting if we still had Exxon Mobil to discuss. We thought we were going to be here for a couple of hours discussing it, and then they brought that out of the bag for us. And then I'll hand over to Councillor Trudy Jones-Evans.
I've just got two things to make something to say, and then Mr. Minns will come in. So just firstly, Solent cluster, that's a separate body completely. It's not what we're talking about with the work that's being done with the three authorities. Isle of Wight Council isn't a member of Solent cluster, but I take on board your concern that there could be undue influence from this body. So I think that's duly noted. And secondly, you were talking about, sorry, a couple of things you're talking about, a few there. The small businesses, yeah. Well, the group I mentioned that has been chaired by Rachel Randall, that is for SMEs. So the business voice was very, very clear when the previous government decided to get rid of the LEPs. It was very much had to be business led. So it is business led, and but the chair will be sitting at that higher level as well, so that voice of business will be right there. Mr. Minns, you've got some more things to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Evans. Just a point of clarity, and it does mention this in the terms and conditions that were sent out under the governance. Councillor Stewart is quite right in as far as the delegated responsibility has been given to the leaders of the respective councils, but only, I will say, just a point of clarity, only over a number of areas. So that they are listed under governance. There are 5 areas that they have delegated responsibility for, but all other decisions outside of those 4 areas need to be made through cabinet.
So just to say about the transport thing, that's been picked up within this economic, the strategy that's being done right now as we speak for government for this month.
Do we have any further questions? This was probably going to be the quickest corporate scrutiny in history at this moment in time. I do apologise for it, but it would have been a lot longer meeting if Exxon hadn't made the decision. We can't change these agendas then. So we're happy to put on the agenda for next time devolution. We do have committee chair meetings. I didn't attend that one this morning. There's only so much I can do in the day at the moment. So Councillor Brading attended instead. Is there any suggestions anybody would like to bring onto the next agenda? Are you happy that we carry on? I do always think that we have to follow the route of making sure that we look at cabinet papers. I think that's really important that that is the standard, because I think that is the main role of this committee, is to be that critical friend for cabinet, and it gets a chance to discuss, you know, stuff that's on the cabinet papers a few days beforehand. So the only thing I would say at the moment I could see that's rearing its head to go on as a separate item would be devolution. Is there anything else specifically that any members of this committee would like to see on the next agenda? You could email me in the next, when do we next set the agenda? I think next week. It'd be next week. So if over the weekend anybody can think of anything they would like to really sort of dig a little bit deeper into, as long as it sits within the corporate agenda. But if you think of something and I think it's not relevant for this committee, what I will do is we do work really together, all the other committee chairs. So I will actually say to all, well, that might not be relevant for this committee, but I'll send it to either Andrew Garrett or to Councillor Stewart, and we'll make sure that it is discussed on the right relevant committees. Do we have any members' questions? Sorry, thank you.
The devolution thing, we still, you're not going to believe this, but we still don't have any clarity from government about what the art of the possible is for our area. We still don't know what area they'd be looking at. So I'm not sure whether it's such an important thing to discuss, but I think we're going to be discussing a little bit of unknowns. I'm not sure what we're going to get out of it, unless it is just to discuss the art of the possible. And I know that the leader was talking about talking with other group leaders about how we can move this forward as a corporate body, the art of the possible. But so I'm not sure, I'm not telling you what to do by any means. I'm just saying we don't really have anything to discuss at the minute.
So one of the things you find when you are no longer a cabinet member is actually when you're just an opposition councillor, you don't hear about a lot of things. Because I am the leader of the largest political group, I have been asked to, I've had several emails from other leaders in other areas who would like to discuss devolution with me. I'm probably too open and honest for my own good sometimes, but I want to bring that, if there is something I know, I think it needs to be brought into a public forum to be discussed. So clearly there is something to discuss if people are emailing and asking to discuss to me, and I would like other people's views before it moved forward. This is why I'm a huge advocate for the committee system, because actually these types of things will be brought into the public, into the councillors. Every councillor will have more of an insight to information that is that at the moment stays within cabinet, and I understand the cabinet system very well. You know, I understand some of the things that do have to be, but I don't think this is one of the things that, you know, needs to be kept for too long. It would be good to have a feeling of what people feel about it on this committee, because it is corporate scrutiny. What does anybody else think?
It's something possibly for a future agenda. The biggest issue, as far as I'm concerned, facing the island is housing. Continues to be, and in my view, in 4 years, nothing's been achieved, nothing whatsoever. Now, yes, we can be a critical friend. We can also investigate why nothing has happened. I know why. I've got a fair idea. I won't say it here, but I don't see that as political obstacles, to be frank. But I do think we need to be looking at it, because I don't know about other people, but my caseload is more about housing than anything else, and nothing is happening. I've been approached by people regarding the failure of the Isle of Wight housing associations to involve themselves much in delivering, particularly on private schemes where, you know, for instance, a planning application has been approved with, you know, 35% affordable housing required, and local housing associations are not interested. I wonder if somewhere we can work this into the agenda and call in the housing associations on the island, that's Sovereign, Southern and Vectors, to find out why they're less engaged. I mean, Sovereign would probably talk about Acorn Farm at the bottom of Horsebridge Hill, which is fair enough. But, you know, I wonder what Southern ever do. Vectors are very small, of course. But is there anything in which we can attract housing associations from the mainland to start getting involved as well? But, you know, after a square meal, a roof over your head is one of the most essential things of human comfort, as far as I'm concerned. And I think as a council, we're failing to address it. The government wrote to this council and all councils in July, Angela Rayner, regarding this. That all seems to have gone very quiet. We still, of course, don't have a planning framework, island plan, whatever you want to call it, you know, to set things against. But, you know, I fear that as I come to, you know, I'm in my 20th year on this council. In year one, my priority in getting elected was delivering affordable homes. It happened at Pan Meadows, but since then we've achieved very little. And this is in a ward where there is real need for affordable housing. And as I say, unless we start to address as a council, I wonder why we're here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I do agree, Councillor Brodie, you know, I do love going to, you know, Branston. It was started with my speech and getting it to planning, and then was carried on through from with the Alliance. I think it's a shining beacon of actually what good should look like, and it's really got a happy environment when you work there. My feeling on this should be that actually it should go to Councillor Stewart's committee, but it is that I would think that that was right, that that's where this should sit. But actually what we don't do enough of is invite other members and make it clear what's on the agendas. You have to go through everybody's agendas. I think I would feel that if we sat that on corporate scrutiny, really it's a really big part of Councillor Stewart's his committee. But what we should do is if he's going to sit it on his committee, I'm quite happy to take it here, got no problem. And if Councillor Stewart wants to let us do it, then that's fine. But I'd have to get Councillor to agree to. I think he's going to let us take it, which we can. Then we can bring it to corporate scrutiny. Councillor Stewart.
Quickly, I think my concern is that the policy and scrutiny committees, which personally, if I led this council, I'd abolish. You know, apart from the ones where we have to have strategy, because I don't think they serve a purpose meeting quarterly. This is a meeting that happens every month. You know, I know it's not your fault, but you know, to leave a meeting after 40 minutes, it isn't great. I mean, so many years ago, I chaired this committee twice. I always limited it to 2 hours. But it used to be used, that time used to be used constructively, in my view, as well as critically. And I just think that an issue as big as housing being farmed out to a committee that meets quarterly, and frankly, I've never seen anything of any significance from there regarding housing. And quite frankly, what's happened? You know, what critical friend role have they played in terms of the delivery of affordable housing on the island? Thank you.
So Councillor Brodie, completely agree. I do think Councillor Outlaw on that committee quite a few years ago wrote a really good paper, really good paper on it. If Councillor Stewart is happy, then we will bring it on this committee, because I agree this committee it is so important, and it actually meets monthly rather than quarterly. But I never want to stop on anybody's toes. So yeah, I do think that, you know, we should actually refer back to that paper actually, because there wasn't a councillor didn't think at the time it was previous before this council, but it was a really good paper. But that does completely show how this council has a tendency to all go, you know, all pat each other on the back and say that was excellent. And actually, what have we seen so far is Branston, you know, and that's a 47, you know, houses. That's it. Councillor Stewart.
Don't entirely agree with Councillor Brodie about the use of scrutiny committees. I certainly think that our particular approach has been quite successful, where we have brought in all members of the committee. And I would draw attention to the Draft Island Planning Strategy meeting last December, where we put forward, I think, 7 recommendations, basically, which were all accepted. And we made sure, and this may be a model which we could consider generally, we made sure that every single councillor had a specific invite to that meeting. And I know that several councillors took the opportunity to come along and were involved in that committee. Interestingly enough, housing is something which we have discussed on our forward planning, and it is part of that possible agenda for the next meeting in January. However, and this is where Councillor Brodie and I and many others will agree, affordable housing generally for the island is absolutely critical. And therefore, if it, can have a separate discussion about where it could lie, but if it would be quicker to deal with it within corporate scrutiny, I suspect my colleagues on my committee would be only too pleased to see it come up.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I do think that we need something nice and meaty for the next meeting. Clearly, December meeting is going to have it can only have 2 items because that will be school place planning, and it would. I am so, as I make it very clear to people, I am not standing at the next election due to my health, but actually, I want to see that I've done 8 years here and I haven't just kept talking about housing. I am really proud of Branston. I'm really proud that it's in my ward. But actually, it is something that we really, Councillor Brodie and I would both like to see some more spades in the ground. You know, I don't want to see people keep talking about it. You know, it would be nice if it came to this committee and we could say, right, why is this not happening? Why are we only doing, I get about money and things like that, but actually we have the same financial officer as Portsmouth, and they are getting projects in the same amount of time built and roofs over people's heads. And that is something that is really important, is why can they do that there with the same finance officer that we have, and actually we can't do it? And actually the only thing we have built so far of any real relevance that is really good is Branston, and look how long it took. If it took from when I was a cabinet member and spoke about it, and then we're nearly at the end of this term and we haven't had another Branston built, there is something seriously wrong and it's broken. So thank you, Councillor Stewart. I appreciate that we've got a bit of permission to bring it to the next committee. So that's what we will do. I think we need to make it a really good deep dive into how many people still need a home. What are the stumbling blocks? Why are other councils being able to build properties and houses and we can't? I picked my granddaughter up from a party the other day, and she is 7, and went to give another little girl a lift. And that little girl was 7 years old. And I said, where am I dropping you? And she said, well, can you drop me to my nan's, please? And I said, you don't want to drop me? She said, no, I don't have a home. And the conversation between my 7-year-old granddaughter and trying for her to understand what homelessness actually meant was a really difficult conversation to listen to. And it would be brilliant if we could just really deep dive and find out, why have we now got children in bed and breakfast? You know, that isn't a home. You know, a child cannot learn. You know, it's completely dysfunctional to have a whole family in a bed and breakfast room. So I think, yes, we'll bring it to the next committee. And Councillor, Mr. Minns would like to speak.
Yeah, again, just a point of clarity, if it is going to be debated at a scrutiny committee, particularly if it's going to be Councillor Stewart's committee, okay, but we need to make sure we've got the right individuals here then, because the housing section no longer sits within regeneration, it sits within adult social care. So we need to make sure we've got the right invitees on the list.
I think that's one of the things we need to look at as well, Councillor Brodie.
I would suggest we need the Director of Finance here, number 1. And I mean, obviously the Director of Adult Social Care and the Strategic Head of Housing. But I'd also be interested in having Housing Association Chief Executives or the senior person on the Isle of Wight in terms of Southern and Sovereign as guests. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. One of the problems, I mean, I fully support this, and I've spoken a number of times on the need for social housing and how the houses that we're building on the island, by and large, aren't really having much effect on the housing register in the sense of taking people off the register. One of my bugbears is that I don't think that I had a meeting and went through the computer system. Not that I'm very good at computer systems, but I went through it with the young lady who was explaining it to me, but she was saying that a lot of the computer system, the information that I was asking, isn't just a question of pressing a button, and that she actually has to sit down and take the information off. It seems to me that there is a lack when planning committee grants a planning permission. We're not really given any information at all about what the urgent need is on the housing register. And we just seem to be granting planning permission sort of in the sky without actually looking at the problem. And the problem is contained in the housing register. I asked a question, I think it was at full council, how many affordable houses were built in the last 12 months? And of those, how many of those affordable houses took people off the housing register? No one was able to give me that information, and it's taken quite a long time. I've got it in a graph form, which I'm still trying to understand. So it should be quite easy, I think, to understand our housing register. And perhaps I've rather in a long, rather winded way of saying, perhaps we could have someone on the IT side. I forget the person, the young lady's name who I met, but if she's still doing that, then perhaps she could attend, or someone from the IT side, to explain why the housing register isn't more accessible.
I think there's lots of questions to be answered, Councillor Spink, and I think that's definitely one of them. You know, we all as councillors ask, you know, who is on the housing register, who wants to live in our wards and stuff like that, and the information never seems to be able to be extrapolated. If you worked within another role and another business, you know, I'm not being funny, with most businesses, you can say, how many widgets of this have I got? You know, I'm not saying people are widgets, but, you know, they all have computer systems. They can't run their business without being able to have a deep dive at a press of a button. It does seem, you are completely right, that with our housing list, we still can't quickly have that information. And I think that's one of the things we do need to discuss at the meeting. I will have a meeting, if it's ever okay with Mel, next week, and we will do some sort of rough, and I will email this committee as well and just say this is sort of some of the headline points, or if you could email me before our meeting, what day next week? Thursday. Next Thursday, that will be really useful. And I think you're completely right, Councillor Brodie, it will give us something really important to discuss at this meeting. As I said, you know, we were going to have a long debate on Exxon, but that hasn't really gone away, I'm convinced of that. But if anybody else got any other questions, Councillor Critchison.
Just going to agree with you about the devolution thing. I don't think we've got much detail at the moment, but it would be better to get a bigger picture of it in a wider context and what we're going to be expected here, so that we're all a bit clearer about that. So I know discussed it at some levels, but we haven't got any clarity at the moment, so that would be useful. And the only other thing I don't know how this would fit, but flooding is something that keeps coming up. I don't know how we could put that back on our agenda to find out about what's going on going forward with the reports and how that can fit in with housing as well. I know that's another big thing that I'd like to see kept on agendas, really. Thank you.
Councillor Lever.
I was just going to mention on flooding, last time I looked, Councillor Stewart or Mel can confirm, but we're looking at the report process in our next meeting in January. Yeah, so to that, if you like.
Yeah. Okay, so housing, and we're going to get everybody that we possibly can here at the next corporate scrutiny meeting to discuss housing and how in reality, how many and what have been the honest stumbling blocks. And I think I will bring this back to, this is not a Cabinet haven't managed to do it. I know how that, as yourselves, how difficult this is, but what we do need to have is that open and honest conversation, which what are the stumbling blocks, and quite clearly other areas are managing to do it, which we can't. We don't need to have the discussion tonight about it. What we need to do is have a very structured meeting with the right people in the room to be able to discuss it. Councillor Fuller.
Yes, one of the things I found quite useful in the dealings that I've had, although I'm dealing with planning, I'm not dealing with housing. And I found in the past, it's really useful to have housing, planning, and the Isle of Wight Council's property services all together, because those three sort of like pillars helps us to do much more. I've got some statistics for affordable housing if you're interested, that I can either circulate to you, or I can let you know now on how we're doing with respect to housing, but it could be a lot better. And I'll take Jeff's point. I think last year 7.3% of the housing that we created was classed as affordable. That's not good enough.
Councillor Fuller, I sat through a planning committee. I wasn't on it. It was because something else in my ward was on that planning committee, and listened to planning committee being quite frustrated about planning application that was going through that was going to be affordable housing, but it was a percentage of what those houses were going to be the market rate. Well, those houses were going to go on the market for like 400,000. There was no stretch of the imagination is that going to be affordable for young people on the salaries that they are here. So I think that's some of the information that we need to look at as well, because actually it is only affordable if you work it back the other way. What is the average salary for a young couple, say a nurse and someone who works somewhere else, or somebody who is a teacher, their average salaries, can they afford to buy somewhere? Well, actually, most of the time, the answer at the moment is no. So I think that's one of the things as well, having data that says we've built affordable housing in areas where clearly it's percentage of a market value that makes it not affordable isn't real data really in my book.
Totally agree, and certainly there was a consultation the government had on the new NPPF. And one of the comments I made was that we are different on the island. The house prices on the island are the average within the country. However, our salaries are a lot lower. And trying to buy houses is not an option for a lot of people. So really our focus needs to be on private rented, or renting through housing associations. Housing associations aren't showing the interest that we need. Jeff is absolutely right. And perhaps what we need to do is use the next corporate scrutiny meeting to be able to tease out some of the issues that they're having with developing on the island. But I totally agree with Councillor Brake.
We do also need to look at the rental market as well. That, I'm sorry, but most of the rentals now are beyond people's scope of actually being able to afford to rent. Councillor Brodie.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've repeatedly asked of the cabinet member, Councillor Stevens, is for members to have a briefing on the whole concept of affordability, tenure and social housing, because I believe there's a lot of misunderstanding around. Many years ago, I have a housing background. I think I understand it. But when we talk about affordability, it isn't about purchase. The vast majority of young people on the island can't afford to buy anymore. They just can't. It's just beyond them. What we need is, I'd rather use the term, pity use, is social housing. Government doesn't use that yet. It's still called affordable housing. I'd like to see socially rented housing, provided by this council, ideally, and Portsmouth are doing it. And they've got the same director of finance as us, who isn't our director because he's not a member of staff. He's a contractor, as far as I'm concerned. And I think I have heard many times from that cabinet member about the obstacles that are placed in the way of pursuing a housing agenda, a housing development agenda for this council. And it's always the director of finance who's blocking that. I'd like to find out why. Thank you.
I agree, he definitely needs to come to this meeting and we ask those questions.
And he's not a member of staff. I'm allowed to say it.
Or an officer. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Brodie, can you? Thank you.
I would like to be involved in the housing discussion. It's something I took up the first time I was elected back in November, was it nearly 2 years ago? Gosh, it seems a lot longer, but that's a different issue. It's something which I think everybody has taken up and become quite frustrated about. If you could open up that meeting to other councillors, as I know that you sometimes do, that would be most welcome.
I am quite happy to open up the meeting to members' questions as long as they are relevant and don't take 2 hours to actually ask the question. Drew.
Thank you. I think along with that, what would really assist would be potentially to have some statements from those various stakeholders and such in terms of the intent and so that we can interrogate, I think, a little bit more effectively, and have some structure around what exactly is the thought leadership behind it. What are the technical stumbling blocks? You know, where do these sort of issues lie, and perhaps really condense down so that we can focus what are the 5 key roadblocks for all of these service heads, and from the cabinet as well, perhaps, that we can really drill down into.
I completely agree. Councillor Spink.
Chair, if we're sort of canvassing what we want to discuss, I still don't understand, I have to say, and it would be good to have some clarity. I don't understand why we can't build what I would call old-fashioned council houses for rent on council-owned land. And I don't want to make a political point, but I nevertheless am going to. I am concerned that we are disposing of quite a lot of island land by way of council-owned land by way of delegated decisions. And there is only so much. It is a perfect opportunity to, in my opinion, a perfect opportunity to provide social housing on land that we already own. That's a 30% discount on the build cost straight away. And I don't know why this council won't seize that opportunity. I've asked about it a number of times, as has, I know, Councillor Brodie in particular, but I just don't understand it. Last time I looked, you know, it is a problem housing, but it's not an impossible conundrum to solve, it seems to me. Last time I looked, I think I'm right in saying that in temporary accommodation, there was about 250 families. So if that's 250 houses, you know, it's not rocket science to build 250 houses on council land and at least get those people into some decent houses. I just don't understand it. And in the 3 years or 3.5 years that I've been on this council, I've never had an answer, really. We just go around in circles as to why it's not possible. I have no idea why it's not possible. And the shame, I think, is this, that when we dispose of land to private developers, which is what we're doing, when we dispose of land to private developers, we all know that the housing, even the so-called affordable element, will not be affordable by islanders. And there's only so much land. We're using it up and we're not solving the problem.
Councillor Spink, I agree, but I think that's part of what that we bring into actually that meeting. So we're all agreed we're going to discuss housing, but this is the one thing that we all agree on. There isn't a councillor who doesn't agree we should have a housing company and we should be building houses as a council that are for rent by this councillor. I don't know a councillor who doesn't agree with that, that actually, why can't we? It's the thing that we've discussed. Let's bring it to corporate scrutiny. Let's get the right players in the room, structure some of the questions so we know what we're going to ask, so they don't feel that they're going to walk into the lion's den. We just want some proper answers. Why we keep having lots of papers being written, but no spades in the ground. Councillor Brake, this will be the last relevant on this.
Done on assessing the agenda for housing. I've got another point to raise, if that's okay.
Yes.
Just this committee, before I sat on it, was promised a speed review in the autumn. We are a week away from being midway through what constitutes a seasonal autumn. I just wondered if there was any update on when that will be coming.
Speed review again. And my answer to my residents, I didn't say which autumn is usually the answer at the moment. And I'll ask the leader of the council, Councillor Phil.
No, I'm not the leader of the council. No intention of wanting to be leader of the council. Understand from Councillor Jordan, and he mentioned it at Regeneration and Neighbourhoods the other day, that the speed review now has been put off till January 2024. And I think the reason 2025 would have been nice 2024. I think we would have got a few brickbats for saying 2024 a couple of years ago, but no, we're told that it's going to happen this winter, but January 2025 is the promise that we've been given by Councillor Jordan. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
My committee was only a week or so ago and it was October, November then, so it slipped again from the sounds of it. Then blame my memory and I apologise.
Can we check that date and then just ask for the relevant cabinet member, I believe is also the leader, to actually send us in writing what date we currently are understanding that the speed review. It'd be nice to have things in writing. If we get that to this committee, then at least we can hold your feet to the fire and say, are you actually going to get it for January 2025? Is there any other questions relevant to this committee, or are you happy if I call it to a close? Is it a relevant member's question to this committee? Well, let's listen and see.
Well, I think it is. I was going to ask Councillor Julie Jones-Evans if we could have an update on whether it's still the intention of the Isle of Wight Council to license land for drone trials on the Mornington Road car park. Now, it does seem to me that that is a potential issue that this committee might like to consider because of the procedure that has taken place. But I would just like to know what the updated position is and whether or not it's still in the pipeline.
Potentially.
Yeah, so I'll let that answer doesn't technically fall within this committee, but Councillor Jones-Evans, would you like to answer that question? I didn't hear you. You were so quick off the draw there.
Potentially.
If there are no further questions, sorry that we made it to an hour. As I keep apologising, we thought we were going to have this really meaty discussion with all of Exxon here, but it didn't happen. I completely take on board Councillor Brodie. This committee needs to be relevant. Sadly, there's not a huge amount on the cabinet papers for Thursday anyway. There is one agendaed item. So if everybody's okay, I will call this meeting to a close. Thank you for all attending. Councillor Dew, I don't dash off, and Councillor Broker can't move until you help me. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.